And welcome to Conservatives Talk.
It's the post-election apocalypse.
Where are we going to be when the dust settles?
This is the Fallout Show.
And welcome to Conservatives Talk. My name is Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we like to remind our viewers to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content that they see on any of the outlets that we do put any of our productions out on. Make sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll always be up to date on any of the productions that we do produce and put out. You'll never miss a single moment of any of our content. You'll always see Jamie's incredibly smiling face, and you'll always be able to hear that incredibly infectious laughter. Also, we'd like to ask you to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and become a sponsor today. It is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to continue to produce this content and spread it out on a wide-scale basis with the mindset, and we do understand that our viewers are aware of this, but Jamie and I do plan on taking over the world one day, and we are giving you a kind of a sneak peek into our mindset and what we're going to do. So with that, just make sure you're going to conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to.
I've been told I'm not allowed to say what I want to after he says that.
You cannot do that. And with that in mind, Jamie, would you like to give your first reminder?
Yes. Boycott hometown headlines. We're almost there.
We are.
It's almost over. And what by that, I mean their paper. That's it.
Not just them, but the entire
paper industry. And I will say this, right? We keep talking about this, not just hometown headlines, but the death of the newspaper anyway. And it's going to be very interesting because the only reason they're really surviving is because of governmental regulations. If governmental regulations were to change, which is something, I'm just tossing that bone out there for someone for maybe later who may be listening. If governmental regulations were to change on how some of those things were advertised, there would be no necessarily need for newspapers anymore, at least in printed form. So,
fair point. And with that, always remember, boycott hometown headlines. And Jamie, with that, how about giving your second reminder?
It has been 8 glorious days here in the state of Georgia.
Had to think about that one.
Math isn't my thing some days. It's been 8 glorious days here in the state of Georgia since Stacey Abrams and the Democratic ticket has been put out to pasture.
-1, at least for statewide offices at the state level.
Yeah, and when we say -1, we mean that he's in the pasture. Guns are loaded. I can't say that either.
Jamie is actively trying to get us banned from every platform out there.
Take 3.
And oh no, this one's staying in.
Okay.
And with that, Jamie, how about your last reminder?
With the last reminder, now I can do a drum roll. It is 20 days until we cancel Raphael Warnock, the false prophet, and put him out the pasture with the rest of them. Justin hates when I do this.
Y'all really just don't understand.
Look, I don't think y'all understand how much I hold back. If you only knew.
And with that note, we do like to give a quick thank you to our affiliates that we have, both nationally and, well, I guess for the most part nationally. And the first one being Net News Network. So Net News Network is a compilation of grassroots organizations that are, or grassroots content producers that make this newsworthy content and produce it at a local level and then share it out on the website at netnewsnetwork.net. If you want to be able to stay well informed on individual locations that have a lot of newsworthy information that's coming out, make sure you're going to netnewsnetwork.net and checking out and seeing exactly what's going on in these local neighborhoods. We Our other affiliate is Veterans for America First. So Veterans for America First is another grassroots organization. They are, except unlike the previous one, they are a grassroots political organization. They do fight tooth and nail to ensure that America First policies are pursued, and they do that through candidates that they do support and endorse and get behind and push across the finish line. And we've actually seen several that made it well across the finish line that they got behind.
Yeah, and one in particular who actually came on our show, and
Mhm.
we'll get into that in just a minute.
Absolutely. And they do that through their media arm, and that being Vet Voice. So Vet Voice is what they use to push their media out on. It's the platform that they do use. And you will only find America First content producers on this platform. So if you're looking for that sort of information, if you're looking for that sort of drive, make sure you're going to Vet Voice, and you can find them on Getter, YouTube, Facebook, anything along that line, in any sort of major media outlet, and you'll be able to find them there. So make sure you're going to Vet Voice to find this content. Excuse me. So with that in mind, Jamie, let's jump right into our first topic, and that is we are post election apocalypse now.
And we need to go over the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent.
So again, let's see where we're going to be with the dust when all the dust settles. Fine.
So let's kind of I like there's so much to go over and where to begin, right? Like I guess
Let's start with the Senate.
Yeah, like where I want to start, especially on the Senate side, is Pennsylvania. Wow. I like there's not wow.
I've heard of dogs winning elections and campaigns. I've heard of dead people winning elections campaigns. I've never heard of a vegetable winning election campaigns.
Ooh, that might get us canceled more than me talking about Raphael Warnock in a pasture with guns. But
I have a medical and a biology background. I can legally say that.
That's true. It just really interests me in what is going on in Pennsylvania. I don't understand how they got here to, in a sense. I do from a certain standpoint, in the sense of this is, I don't know how to put this conversation. They are very old school to a certain degree in some concepts. And I think that Dr. Oz was a little bit too moderate and modern for them. And so that's kind of why I felt that some people might not have voted for him that we felt should have. But to see the opposite when it comes to Fetterman himself, who goes like, I mean, he's an anarchist. Like that's point blank and simple. The guy talks about like, no cash bail. He talks about letting murderers free. He's 50 years old and lives in his parents' basement. And then his campaign really took a launch more so after he had a stroke and couldn't really communicate that well. So they had to do interviews with the TV prompter.
Is he going to go to the Senate floor, to the dais in a hoodie?
That's another question, right?
I know Jamie and I both are in one, but we're not on the dais. So we're not on the Senate floor at the dais.
It's just cold, and I don't like the cold.
But he's like a lizard,
literally, but pun intended. It's intriguing to me how a state that has had very conservative values went down this pathway.
Well, I will say I think you're hitting on something. Oz was an incredibly weak candidate, but he was the candidate that the voters in Pennsylvania chose to be their candidate to run for the Republican ticket.
Which makes me think of a little, like here's some consulting operatives, right? Like it makes me wonder, and this is just a thought because it's sometimes how my mind works. Oz was put on there, and there's a split on both sides of how you get there. So they put up someone who can rally their base, which is a far left guy. then you have someone who is on the right who conservatives across the nation felt like was a good candidate to a certain degree, not necessarily in policies, but looking comparatively.
Well, compared to John Fetterman, a Rock is a good candidate on the Republican ticket.
But do you get what you see where I'm going with this? Here's someone who, like, without totally diving into Pennsylvania and local issues in Pennsylvania, here's someone who has gone through a master's program, who has high level degrees, like is on television, owns his own business, like compared to someone
You're
who
really saying a lot of stuff that I really want to just refute.
it's combative, and it's combative, and it can be refuted, which is probably why a lot of people did not vote for him. My reason for saying it on is that if you look at the two on paper, which is what happens a lot of time in these national races when people like myself have no business in Pennsylvania, right? And you look at it on paper and you're like, why did you choose this guy versus this one? You know, it makes you want to go there and go, what's going on with these people?
Well, that's true.
And how did they lose their state?
I really am curious about that, but and without touching that last statement you just made, because the same could be said about us. But again, I digress. We were told, and everyone anticipated because of what we were seeing from the numbers, what we were feeling on the ground, where we thought everything would settle and where we thought everything would wind up would be that this would have been a red tsunami. But it turned out to be, to quote somebody that I heard the other day, and I can't really tell you who it was because I don't remember, but it was a pink trickle.
Yeah. Just a little drizzle.
Yeah, it's highly disappointing, but there were some good things to come out. We officially have lost the Senate. We will not gain the Senate at all.
Even with the runoff.
Even with the runoff in Georgia. Although we have to have Herschel in there because Herschel he's the blocker. He's the one that is going to keep the Senate just right, or the Senate left-wing radical liberal just crazies from nuking the filibuster and being able to push anything through with a 50% margin plus one.
Yep. And here's the other crazy thing that I think it's very important for all of our listeners to hear. And that is, we saw and everyone saw the numbers that came out in the state of Georgia, especially Northwest Georgia, right? And there are a lot of your neighbors, a lot of our neighbors who voted down ticket Republican, but either voted for a Libertarian or in fact voted for Raphael Warnock in the Republican, in the election. Mind blowing. If that happens, not only do we lose the filibuster, but they will be able to pass everything that they hadn't gotten passed yet because it's just in the Senate waiting.
Build back better. Well, no.
Well, it's not in the Senate waiting. It's not in the Senate waiting. But the groundwork's there to where it can go into where they can just redraft it in the Senate, and then push the bill, pass it through the Senate, and then get it to the House.
Where thankfully we at this moment are hearing that we may have a majority, although it will be a very, very narrow majority. Everyone across the country thought that we would have at least a 20 to 25 seat margin. It's turning out to look like we might have a 5 to 6.
Yeah. I want to dabble in that in just a minute. I want to go back to the Senate for a second. Because there are a couple races that I think are important to highlight that are weird. Most people don't know this, but Alaska, right? Alaska has more of a highest vote getter style election, and it ended up being between two Republicans, which is how they were able to call that.
It's kind of a jungle election. If you're not aware of what that is, it's everybody's on the ballot. Party affiliation doesn't really apply there, and you rank your choice of which voter or which candidate you would like to see in office. So you put 1, 2, 3, and based upon those, then they do some mathematical headstands, and they come up with the voter number that they have.
Some weird thing, right? Because there's not, it's not a decimal percentage. It's just a number. And so, like, you know, I don't know how they plus or minus that, but but I remember one of the last times I looked
There
at
may
that
be
race.
some long division in there too.
Yeah, like one of the last times I looked at that race, it was they had it at like I really don't know how this mathed, right? But it was like 48, 48, 3 for the top 3 candidates. And I'm like, I don't know how that works. That's 101. But I guess,
Again, we love our brothers in Alaska.
yeah. We just need some of our friends to come explain how y'all do it.
Yes, please do.
Um,
Because nobody across the country understands.
nobody got it. We were calling friends from other states. No one gets it. We just want please, like call in the show, send us an email, explain it.
Please do.
Nevada was very close.
Yeah,
that was heartbreaking.
Yes, it was. Yes, that one.
Because we thought that we could hold on to Nevada, pick up and win in the runoff, and then Tottenham with Alaska, we're sitting at 51.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is still Arizona, of all places, because
the last number that I saw was roughly 89% of the vote had been tallied. And the biggest disparity that I saw outside the Senate race, which, I mean, it's looking like Kelly's going to carry that one. It's looking like excuse me, not Kerry, but Kelly's going to win that one. It's looking like Kerry Lake's going to be shy, which just still blows my mind how that whole thing happened there with the whole 20% of the election, or the whole 20% of the Dominion devices going down. They equated it to an ink error in 20% of the printers in a single county, which is the largest populous county. I don't see. I mean, how does that happen?
Because really, that county is all they. Well, here's the thing. That's all they got. Like, I don't mean to say it like that to our friends in Arizona, but like that's 60% of the population in the whole state is in one county.
Yep.
So
how can that have happened?
Like, that was all you had to do was test those machines.
And they called it a hiccup. It's more like a regurgitation, if you ask me.
Which leaves things very interesting, right?
To say the least.
I think I guess we can bring it back home now. Like, you know, I mean, another thing was to see run Herschel run, right? Because that was an interesting race. No one gave the man a shot, and now he forced the runoff, which has every left-leaning consultant who has my contact information was like, "What the hell is this?" You know, and I was like, "I told you so." Get out of inside the perimeter and learn the state of Georgia, because Atlanta does not run the state.
Yeah. Fortunately, they do not. It's going to come down to a it's going to come down to a runoff here, and that runoff will decide what the future of this nation will look like.
Yeah. And you should see these people like because
I know who they are.
Well, what I mean by contact information is like they have my Facebook, and so the whole world watches them combat me, and it's very astonishing to me how people and this is the thing that only Georgians really get. It astonishes me how people inside the perimeter only think that the perimeter is the only thing that exists. Like outside of and by the perimeter we call it, you know,
Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, like the 11 surrounding counties inside of Metro Atlanta. If you live in those counties, most of the liberals inside of there do not go anywhere outside of it. And it's basically like this bubble to where they just kind of think that it's just farmland outside of the bubble and nothing else exists.
Where 10 people live.
Yeah. And so I don't know. It was really interesting for me, because I guess it was the first time that I honestly looked at it in that light to see how disconnected Atlanta is with the rest of the state to where they couldn't see what the rest of us were seeing.
They are incredibly disconnected. There's no question about that whatsoever. Georgia is a fundamentally dynamic state when it comes to political leanings. You either live within the metro Atlanta, and 90% of that is going to be very Democratic leaning, or you live within the red wall areas, which we refer to red wall as the very heavily Republican areas that surround metro Atlanta and kind of, like we say, or like to say, contain and try and keep that disease and that cancer from spreading out into our areas.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a very dynamic situation there with that.
Yep.
But
On to the House.
yes, so we are they are projecting that we will carry the House by a very slim margin, kind of like what the Democrats have now, but we will carry it. Or at least that's what we're being told. But we were also told that we are going to have it by like 30 seats. So who knows? To be honest with you.
Well, so here's an interesting fact that I realized too. Right. Gen Z, this younger generation, is something, and for the first time, this is a younger generation who had an earlier age. And by earlier age, I mean like out the gate at 18, is coming in and voting in a large wave. They were the largest, I guess you could say, age range classification of voters who came out on a national level.
Well, I still want to see the statistical numbers on that because I'm not entirely sure that's 100% accurate.
I've heard this multiple times and looked at a lot of like raw data because the dust hasn't settled yet.
Like I said, I'm gonna need to look into that a little bit more because if that is true, that is one of the most significant statistical anomalies
ever.
Yes,
ever. Which is why I think why I wanted to highlight it, right? Because like this didn't happen with any other previous generation.
No,
we all had some form of rebellion as a generation beforehand, but in this drove like this at this moment in time, that's never happened before. Because
never has a younger generation come out in a larger capacity than the oldest generation.
Correct. And what I'm trying to go back to on this point is we've, for the last couple of cycles, right, we've talked about the fact of millennials being larger than Gen X, but not as large as, please do not get mad at me, as the AARP range. Okay. And so between conservative millennials and our 65 plus, we've been able to maintain, you know, a lot of good data when it comes to elections to where these models worked. This is that major anomaly because when we start talking about, you are now trying to say that yes, that generation is larger, but for them to actually come out and vote as a block that way, it's kind of, it just means that we need to get out as conservatives and mentor and show them that like the error of their ways.
Yeah. Again, I need to verify some of that. I don't wholly put a lot of faith into that just because of
Justin doesn't like
my
my
freedom in believing that.
Justin doesn't like my math.
Well, it's not your math. We both heard the same thing.
No, I heard that tonight. Yes, but I've heard it multiple times. This isn't again, just
it's something I'm gonna have to verify with them because
it's gonna come back as true.
It's statistically it would be a statistical anomaly if that happened. So that's something that I do myself would like to verify with that before I jump on that conclusion with it. But one of the things that we did see with that were some really good things as far as the House races go, and that being that there were a lot of Democrat stronghold places that were flipped.
Yeah, which is very interesting. I can't remember
And Republican, by the way.
the new representative's name, but the 27th congressional district for the state of California went red, and this is like for the first time in a long time. This is actually, they voted Republican.
Well, 5 seats in New York turned red.
Yep.
They actually overthrew the Democrat or the DNC fundraising guy. Their head fundraiser, they overturned his seat.
Which is wild.
Well, you see the crime wave that's going on in New York, so
yeah, but they don't care about crime. They stop no.
Apparently, the voters do.
I mean, like stereotypes are created for a reason, and they stop no. The stop and frisk.
Well, that was New York City. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's a mindset, right? Like I know upstate New York is different from New York City, but
these were Long Island seats.
What I'm saying is, upstate, each area part of New York is slightly different, right? Whether you're where you're on the islands, or whether you're in the city, or whether you're upstate. My point being is that there is a certain base level ideology that was broken across the state to a degree.
I'll give you that. I'll agree with that. But one of the biggest things now, moving forward into it, is the campaigning and the run towards who's going to be in leadership, especially within the House, since the Senate's going to hold the leadership.
Yeah,
there's no other way around it.
Yeah,
but in the House, who controls the purse strings? Who can defund anything that they want to? All they've got to do is pass the budgets, pass the financial means, send it over to the Senate. The Senate will say, "Yeah, we're not doing that." It's like, okay, well, we're going to shut down. Simple as that.
Not that simple.
No, it is. Thank goodness.
There'll always be a midnight stroke of the pen.
Yes, but there will be massive concessions in our favor with those midnight strokes.
So many things I want to say right now.
There's nothing to say because it's true. Executive order cannot fund any of that.
What I'm talking about is that's not how we get business done. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Always the bureaucrat. But we are, and as much as I want or don't want something to happen, there is some contention that is being done within the House leadership, potential House leadership. Right now, we are seeing, for Speaker, Kevin McCarthy is the only one that is running for that seat at the moment. The largest fundraiser by far was Kevin McCarthy. Brought in $500 million that he paid into the RNC just through fundraising that he did himself. $500 million. The closest other person to that was Steve Scalise with, I think it was rough or on the lower end of 20 million. So if you're looking at a potential presidential run in a presidential year, who would you rather have in that seat?
Yep.
But you do have a lot of people that are saying never Kevin, which can cause a lot of problems, especially with such a razor thin majority.
Yeah. Which is interesting in itself, in my opinion. I'm not big on the U.S. House because I think it's a jungle more so than the Senate, but
well, they're both jungles. They're both crap.
There's a little bit of higher statue in the Senate.
Not
That's how
at
it was
all.
designed.
There's just less.
Go back and look. That's how it was designed. It was supposed to be more of a robust, wild
me, I
place
know
in
more.
the house.
So it was designed. It was supposed to be the deliberative body, but it was designed to be the deliberative body and have the 6-year terms because they were not directly elected by the people. They were appointed by the states. And because we no longer have state-appointed senators, they are directly elected by the people. It's still just the free-for-all that it was before.
What I'm referring to is the process of procedures to a certain degree of how the House was supposed to be looked at it.
Well, the
first.
House could set up the same procedures as the Senate.
It could, but that was not the nature of how the House was supposed to be designed in the original state.
Well, again, the procedures in the Senate were reminiscent back to pre-17th Amendment, and they just carried over, and they just used the nuclear option to get rid of those thresholds that were set up.
The Senate has more prestige than the House.
No, it doesn't. You're so elitist going back to the pre-colonial times back in England, where the House of Lords.
Yeah, that was the model of the Senate.
Exactly. The House of Commons being the House of Lords being the Senate.
Exactly.
But we kicked England's butt to where we didn't have to do things their way.
But we're not doing things their way. We're doing things the way that America was designed when they created the chambers.
Set up that way.
Still history. Still our procedures. Still how was the culture of the chamber environment was designed.
What? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it does. You just don't like it.
No, Jamie's throwing random words together that make no sense whatsoever. So,
no.
Did you have a stroke? Are you John Fettering me right now?
No, I'm Dr. Oz and you.
Well, you saw how that turned out. Too soon.
Hey, for a race to Senate.
But we're seeing some of this turmoil that's being brought up, and without naming any names or really giving too much detail into some of this stuff, there is a process and a potential avenues that may be opening up that could lead towards somebody being appointed or somebody being voted into that seat that is either A, no longer in the Republican Party, or B, having Nancy Pelosi coming back in.
I still feel that's buck talk, but again, the House is a jungle, so you can see things like that from there.
Unfortunately, it's not buck talk. That's the thing. Unfortunately, it is not.
But that's the jungle of the House, right? Procedure allows for as long as a certain number of the entire House, not just the majority, vote for a person to be speaker, they're speaker.
You mean like in the Senate?
I was just trying to trash talk the House.
I noticed. The same exact procedures for the House are for the Senate when it comes to leadership.
But we weren't talking about that. We were talking about the House.
Jamie's trying to win an argument. He knows he has no.
I'm not trying to argue. I'm just trying to make a point.
No, and your point is falling well. Your point is flaccid.
Nah, not in the slightest.
It needs a little blue pill for you.
Nah, you know what, Justin? One day we're gonna sit back and we're gonna.
And you're gonna say, "I know you're right, Justin. Always. I'll just listen to you from now on."
No, we're gonna go to Hillsdale website and go back through this series.
Okay, then. Challenge accepted.
Talk about the beginning of the chambers. He didn't even know what to say right now.
Yeah. He knows I've done more studying and I've done more research on that time period in that era than 90% of the people he knows. So
nah.
Okay, Jamie.
Nah.
We're gonna do a new.
We're
gonna do a new segment. We're gonna do a new segment on here. Just says, "Okay, Jamie."
We can add that to my list of catchphrases.
No, that's mine now. Okay, Jamie. But
I'm just trying to think about
this will be an interesting next 2 years, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the other races that were kind of indifferent. I mean, a lot of other things kind of went, especially here in the state of Georgia, went the way that we and most sane people kind of thought that they were going to.
Yeah, although I'm still perplexed by the Kemp Warnock vote, but okay. We're in a runoff.
I'm not complex. I don't like the answer.
Oh, I know what the answer is. I'm just perplexed by it.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah, it's one of those. But yeah, that's again, we are in a runoff. There's nothing we can do about that. There's nothing that's going to change that. So we
I
have
mean,
to
let's
push
not
people
shy.
out there.
Yeah, and let's not shy away from the conversation. I personally feel that this was a underlining um kind of scream at the party from a moderate standpoint as why you had a lot of people vote for Kemp and not Herschel. I mean, it's complexity in its
But
finest.
it wasn't just a vote for Kemp and not Herschel. It was a split ticket vote for Kemp and the radical Warnock.
Well, because those people who would vote that way aren't going to vote libertarian. Do you see what I'm saying? They're going to vote a party, not libertarian. Only the floating 3%, I call it, right, are going to carry the libertarian vote, which is why you can kind of see if you got a 2% libertarian, we go to a runoff.
So in Northwest Georgia alone, Kemp received well over 150,000 votes more than Warnock did.
Mm-hmm.
That's
11%
or
of
excuse me, than what Herschel did. That to
in
me,
some early polling data, 11% of the people who said they were going to vote for Kemp were going to vote for Warnock
exactly. So I don't
in
see that
Northwest
as
Georgia.
I don't see that as being the moderate that's coming out and doing that.
Only a moderate would do something like that. And the reason why I say
But
that,
there's nothing moderate whatsoever about Warnock.
there isn't, but that's why I mean it's a stab, okay? Because of the fact that people were seeing Herschel as the Trump Trump ticket pick, even though Herschel decided to run before he got the Trump endorsement.
I just
Which is why we have to, you know what I mean,
that,
show that.
that still to me is shooting
My boy.
or cutting off your
If your nose,
hand despite the arm.
yeah, just cut off your nose, spite your face. I think that was the phrase. But yeah,
Well, hand is arm, same thing.
I know.
But yeah, it's I mean that's
It doesn't make sense, right?
stupidity at its best
It
for
doesn't
me.
make sense, right?
It's
It doesn't
stupidity.
make sense because
if you did that, you are stupid. I'm sorry, you are stupid. You are, excuse my language, but you are a dumbass.
Justin.
That's staying in.
No, somehow we can't cuss.
I said excuse my language.
Because here's part of the reality of that, right? For whatever you think about the wave that's coming through with the party, we are still one party. And you cannot do things like that because all it does is hurt all of us. Country before self.
That the only time that there should be any infighting like that within the Republican Party is in the primary season.
Correct.
Once the primary's over with, the fight's done, you get out and support that candidate. That's the one that you get behind.
Yep.
Before that, you duke it out. It's like going to a family reunion. You go to the family reunion, everybody dukes it out, but when you come together for the group photo, everybody's lovey-dovey.
Yeah, that's why I always say primaries are like sibling rivalries.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I can cuss my cousin out and punch him in the face, but you can't. And when we start hearing stuff like this is the type of situation as to why why the rest of the country looks at us like we're a purple state when everybody knows that Georgia's a red state.
I think Jeremy's trying to tell us he's voted for Warnock.
You got me, boy.
You heard it here first. Jamie Palmer voted for Warnock.
Wait, no, take that soundbite out because someone will use that nonsense later because that never happened. Ever.
I think it's pretty conclusive that never happened.
Yeah, like that's you just told me I voted for Satan. Well, that's
you just told me you moderates can get behind him.
That's no. What I'm saying is here's what I'm saying. What I'm honestly saying is there are people who chose this method to continue a fight that should never happened. That's my point.
I refer back to my previous statement.
11%.
Again, previous statement. I'm not going to say it again.
No, I'll say
previous statement.
Freaking stupid.
I was referring to the more colorful version, but that
I-
works too.
Yeah,
It's already been said once.
I had to bleep it.
But yeah, where we go from here. So come January, we will have a lame duck dead Congress in office.
Honestly, this is some real House of Cards bull, man. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like we could win the majority of the House and Nancy Pelosi still be Speaker. Let's put that, let's take that and put a pin in it, right? We just, for like the data showing, some data, Justin's going to check his math wherever he does, is showing that an anomaly happened, which is only gave them control of the Senate. Okay. Right. Then you got House seats that should have never even been in contention, like one in particular in Colorado, that are in contention. You got a whole wave of things going on that make this general election unlike almost anything else in the course of modern history.
Redistricting had a lot to play in with that seat, Colorado.
I agree with that.
But either way, yes. Something that did come to mind, something I was reading just today, actually. Do you know who they're getting ready to nominate and confirm as the new head IRS guy?
No.
The same guy that was under Obama? You remember what happened with the IRS under Obama?
I really don't want to talk about this anymore.
Where they targeted and investigated conservative groups and donors?
Yep. Well,
after the massive leak of IRS data and tax filings of conservative people with I think it was like WikiLeaks or whatever their organization is or site that is. We're getting ready to put the same guy that Obama did this with back in the office.
Well, you know just as well as I do that Biden's term is Obama's third term.
Oh yeah.
That's point blank, period. All the things that Obama and Michael couldn't get done when they were in office. Biden's here. And I said Michael on purpose.
Wasn't going to. I'm just going to nod. Okay. But yes, they're getting ready to reconfirm him. So you can only imagine what they anticipate.
What the next 2 years are going to be like.
Well, yeah, think about this. And they just talked about it, and thankfully we will be or hopefully be taking back the House. And McCarthy's already promised number one thing is to defund the 87,000 IRS agents. Imagine putting the guy who did all the investigatory stuff under Obama back into head with 80,000 new IRS agents.
Nope.
Having your bank spy on you, which was a big idea of his. Having these IRS agents spying on you, big idea of his.
And especially now that they are really trying to push to where anything that's withdrawn or transferred over $600 is looked into.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Like that means every time I pay, like
my rent,
bills, period.
Yep. You'll be flagged. Have to be investigated for it. But with that, this has been the apocalyptic fallout show for Conservatives Talk, and we do like at the end of every show to make sure that we remind our viewers that
they're alive, man.
It's something to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on any of our productions that we do produce and put out there. Make sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way that you'll always see Jamie's smiling face. You'll never miss a single episode that we do, and you'll always have a firsthand grasp on that infectious laughter, although sometimes I want to throw the cup at him.
Send it over, House.
We also like to encourage our viewers and ask them to become sponsors for Conservatives Talk by going to our website at conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to because it will ultimately help me, and I'm just saying me at this point in time because I've lost faith in Jamie
He can have
to
the
take
house.
over the world. Jamie's viewpoints and his values no longer matter. So he has confirmed this today.
Justin gets so upset.
So yeah, it's helped me take over the world. And
that's how you just
we
lost it to me.
well, that's fine. And we do like to say a quick thank you to our affiliates with Net News Network and Vets Voice and their media arm. Excuse me, Net News Network, Veterans for America First, and their media arm, Vet Voice. Jamie's got me all hot and bothered.
I got him upset, but you know what? We did forget one thing that I think is very important for we highlight before we close out. The gentleman Josh Williams, who was on our show,
that is very true. Yes,
you know, he came on and spent some time with us, won his state house race, and flipped a Democratic district in the Ohio legislature.
So that one actually has a lot more. That one has a lot more impact and meaning behind it than just what we're telling you with that, because that seat was rated as a lean Democrat seat.
Yep.
This man came in
and put in some work.
Yeah, not just that, but he's not what would be considered as a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican or anything along that line. He's pretty right leaning.
Yeah.
And for him to come in and win a seat in Metro Toledo, of all places, just south of Canada. I mean, this district that was drawn was like not drawn in his favor.
He is a strong, conservative, African-American future leader in the state of Ohio.
Why's it got to be about race, man? It's always got to be about race.
It's not got to be about race, but I mean, like, it's just, and in the state of Ohio, that's impressive.
That is
like, you know what I mean? Like
he did an incredible job. He did amazing with what he had to do,
and Georgia, the groundwork Kansas, that he put in. That's Ohio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, Ohio still has.
It's above the Mason-Dixon line.
It still has sunset cities. Like
it's true. Yeah, no, he did an incredible job there. What he was able to accomplish there is powerful. Yes, it's something that deserves a lot of recognition, a lot of credit behind it, because he put in the work, he put in the effort, like he did with just about everything in his life, and he came out on top.
Yep. I mean, Josh, we're gonna have to get you back on the show, man.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a follow up with this guy,
because that's
the real
impressive. Deal. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And with that in mind, Jamie, would you like to close us out with your favorite part?
Yes.
Oh, Jamie, would you like to close us out with your favorite part?
Yes. 20 days. 20 days. And then we can get rid of the false prophet for good. But you got to get out there and vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. December 6th is the day you can request absentee ballots up until the 28th of November. And then early voting kicks off in the next couple of days here in the state of Georgia for the runoff. But December 6th is D-Day for the country. And it all comes back down to Georgia again. And we cannot sit on the sidelines. We have to get out. We're going to have to pull one out of their ticket and start renting buses and carrying people if we have to, and flood the polls one more time this year.
I saw 4 buses pull up to a single polling location in one day on election day.
Yep.
4. But it's legal. And with that, this has been Conservative Talk, and we will see y'all